Okay, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are. I know we usually have someone from Los Angeles, where it's probably early morning. And thank you to Gemma and everyone at the JLE for making this forum possible for us to learn together. Nice to see you, Claire. Again, don't overdose on these sharing. Brands in South Africa, nice to see you. Howard in Toronto. Chassia, Anton, Jody, nice to have you with us. Elliot from New York, Darren from London, Eitan, I think from Paris, if I'm not mistaken, Shoshana, Carol in Tarzana, California, Howard in Edgware, Ruth in London, I think, Mordechai in Manchester, the Bogan family in London. Okay, greetings. Forgive me if I don't greet everyone personally. Let me remind you, as usual, please, I have a chat open here, so I can see your questions if you are logged in via the JLE. If you're on another platform streaming, I don't see you, so you'll need to email me, please, through the JLE if you want to ask a question, and I'm very happy to answer if I can. Let's move on to the next step in our discussion of mitzvahs. Can everyone hear me? Please give me a quick, if you're sitting at a computer or you have some way to type in a message on the chats, just give me a quick yes, please, so I know that everyone's with me. I'm not speaking to myself. Orion, Devora, Batsheva, Jenny, Nikki in Croatia. Nikki, I hope your family is okay. I hope you have been reading my emails. Mayo family in South Africa, I hope you got my email about the sins of the greats and you listened to that. Mickey, I hope you listen to that fundamental share, very important. If you email me again, I'll send you a wonderful source, original source. Yechiel, nice to have you. Mark, okay, I see lots of people. Alright, okay. Let's move on. Let us move on. We have been studying, for those of you who just joined, we are studying the mitzvahs. We began with a classic work known as Derech Mitzvosecho, the third generation of Chabad Hasidus. Right, that's a classic and totally unique work on the depth behind every commandment. And we studied the principles that he mentioned, some of the Kabbalistic ideas. And then we spoke about various mitzvahs. We began a couple of weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago, with the Ten Commandments. After all, it was Shavuot. That was topical. So we began with the Ten Commandments. We started with an introduction of the meaning of the Ten Commandments in general. Then we spoke about honoring parents. Let us move today to the parallel commandment, the 10th commandment of not coveting. Thou shalt not covet. Do not be jealous in a certain sense. Don't covet. Let's see if we can give this some depth. And I hope reach a level of understanding much deeper than the simple meaning, but I'll try to cover the practicalities as well. Understood correctly, this should change your life. So let's do it like this. Let's have a very, very brief intro on the meaning of the Ten Commandments to put this into place. I would then like to go as deep as possible into the root idea. It'll be a little abstract and Kabbalistic. I apologize for that, for those who are not their cup of tea necessarily. And then we will try to apply that to the practicalities, how the mitzvah works, and its emotional, psychological content, if you like, and its practical content. I hope I have your permission for that. So let's begin with a very brief, very small nutshell to condense the idea of the Ten Commandments. You'll remember that we said the Ten Commandments, I'm not going to go through the whole discussion and development of this idea, but I hope you'll remember we said the Ten Commandments are not more important or more weighty or more punishable than other commandments. They're not the basic moral principles on which society is founded. I try to explain that. What are the Ten Commandments? The 10 root categories from which the Torah unfolds. The 10 root categories. For example, Shabbat, which I hope we'll discuss in the future, is the root of all the time commandments, all the festival commandments, all the Shabbat commandments. They're all rooted in Shabbat, which is the root of time. And so each of the 10 commandments is a category, a package, if you like, which unpacks to a few dozen or perhaps 100, whatever number it is, mitzvahs that are subcategories of that component. That's how the Torah is organized. I tried to explain that. The first commandment contains all of them. I am the commander. Then there's the converse. There are none others than me. Those are the first two, right? Mother and father commandments, if you like. Then there are 10 categories. The 10 break down into many further categories. I explained that according to Kabbalistic teaching, of course, there are actually 1,000, as it must be if you're looking at a system of tens. but only 613 or 620 need correction in this world, the others are too high. And all of these are deep discussions, and of course each of them needs to be spoken out fully. So in summary, the 10 Commandments are the 10 packages. If you were not with me 2 weeks ago, please go back and listen to that class. They're all downloadable at the JLE. Nothing more fundamental than this, an understanding that there are 10 roots, and everything you ever experience is an unfolding of those roots. Always pays to go back to fundamentals. Those are the things to understand. In physics, you don't want the details, you want the laws. In medicine, you don't want the details, you want the diagnosis, you want the underlying principle, the one pathological element that explains all of the details. That's wisdom. So that's the 10 Commandments. Then we noticed, next step, that they're broken down into 2 sets of 5. Right, here is in Hebrew I was able to download them correctly and make a printout for you. In English, very difficult, as I pointed out, because the Christians do not count them the way we do. Right? There's a misunderstanding of how the 10 are put together, and that's another subject which we began to look at. 10 Commandments. And what we noted was there are 2 sets of 5. I am Hashem, all the way down to honoring parents. These are the 5 human-God interactions, and then there's the human-human interactions. Right? And we pointed out that they're parallel. So let's pick it up from there in order to understand coveting. Right, let me use the English version for those whose Hebrew is not slick enough. Here's the English version which I just wrote up to show you the parallels, right? I'm sure everyone can see that. So let's remind ourselves that we're talking about 2 parallel systems. Right? Here's the fundamental concept. Stay with me carefully. The first one is I am Hashem, which is the primary mitzvah in the human-God interaction, and realizing that the essence of existence is Hashem. What does that look like in the human realm? That the essence of existence in the human realm, or namely the presence of God in the human realm, is the human soul. And therefore the first commandment is to respect the human soul. Do not kill. Don't exile or expunge from the world a human soul. Very, very clear. The second, no other gods before me. Right? Do not betray that most intimate and potent and important of all relationships. Do not betray me. Right? Don't take that intimacy, that depth, the most important bonded relationship, which is so closely bonded that it's an identity with you, and betray that. Obviously, the human commandment is do not commit adultery. That's exactly the parallel. Do not take that bonded relationship, which is husband and wife, becoming fused into one, and betraying that closeness, right? The Rambam points out in Moreh Nevuchim, in the first shar, that when God uses the terminology of jealousy, like a marital jealousy, like someone would feel if their spouse was close to someone else, that word of kano, right? Kel kano, a jealous God, that terminology of marital jealousy is used, God uses about himself only in one context, idolatry. Okay, worshipping other gods. Very, very significant. He never mentions that word. That word is never, that concept of jealousy, that you're betraying something that is totally my right, my privilege, my bond with you. That word of jealousy, in denoting a marital betrayal, God uses that about himself, describes himself that way, only when it comes to idolatry. Do not worship other gods. And the parallel could not be clearer. Next, okay, do not take my name in vain. Don't use an appellation of mine, a projection of mine. What is a name, after all? A name is a projection of self. My name is not me, it's a projection of what I am. It's the handle you use to get hold of me. So don't use a projection of myself for your own purposes, my name. And obviously, the human interaction, do not steal. Don't use projections of other people, namely their possessions. They extend themselves into their possessions. Don't steal. Technically speaking, the commandment not to steal actually refers to kidnapping. But obviously, that is the root of all stealing, is stealing the person himself. Obviously, those are correct. You see the parallels very clearly. Let's go to the fourth one. Keep Shabbat. What is the idea of Shabbat? It's giving testimony that Hashem created the world. Right? A duty. It is a testimony. It's a sign and a testimony that Hashem created the world. And the parallel in the human realm, do not give false testimony against a human being. Right? You can see very, very clearly the parallels. Nobody could mistake them. There are other ways to set up the parallels as well, by the way. This is not the only one. Right? Obviously, there's endless content in the Ten Commandments, since it's the root of the whole Torah. But that is one conventional way of understanding the parallel. Let's get to today's subject, the last one. What's the parallel between honoring parents and do not covet? That's what we need to understand. We mentioned it briefly. Let's apply it and move into the concept of coveting. And here's the parallel between them. Honoring parents is correct attribution. Right? I belong there. I'm only in the world because of my parents. The reason you have to honor your parents, we went into this in great detail. The reason you need to honor your parents with all the mitzvahs of honoring parents is because you owe your existence to them. Correct attribution, I attribute my being to the source. And we explained that in Midas it's called gratitude. In philosophy it's called tracing things to a root. In Kabbalah it's gaining God consciousness because your parents take you back immediately to your grandparents. They take you back to your great-grandparents. Immediately that takes you back to Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, and immediately, obviously, that takes you back to Hashem. If you're a person focused on driving down to sources, honoring your parents will lead you to God consciousness. And that's the clear reason why honoring parents is listed on the first set of the Ten Commandments, namely the human-God interactions, even though parents are human. But they're not listed on the side that deals with humans. They're listed on the side that deals with God, because they are, so to speak, your creators. You go back to your parents, it's a step, it's a transitional zone from relating to God as the creator and relating to human beings. Right? This is the transitional zone. Your parents are humans, so you owe them a human-human interaction, but they're unique in all of humanity, that they're the point of origin that brought you into the world. And therefore, right, the emotional or the quality of character that we call this is gratitude. I pointed out, and I hope you remember, that every commandment, every level of Torah, every issue in Torah has parallel tracks. There's the halachic track, what it looks like in practical halachic application. There's the Musa track, what it looks like in quality of character. There's the Kabbalistic track. There's the philosophical track, what we call Ashkafa. They're all parallel. Honoring parents in practical halachic terms, how you honor your parents. Philosophically in Ashkafa, tracing things back to a source. That's the fundamental idea. The Kabbalistic source is going back to the original source. The Musa source, the Musa concept, the Musa parallel in parents, gratitude. Ultimate gratitude. Not simply for something they've done for you, but for your entire existence. And that's why you have to honor parents, whether you like them or not, whether they've been good to you or not. That's not the point. So that is the idea of honoring parents. Correct attribution, total attribution. Now watch carefully. What is not coveting? It's correct attribution. Just like when it comes to your existence, you go back to Hashem, your parents, and you say, that's where I come from, right? My existence is correctly attributed there. When it comes to human interaction, I do not claim for myself anything that belongs to anyone else. I don't covet. That means I attribute correctly what belongs to them. The gifts they were given in the world are the things they need. Which means, let me put it in a converse way to try to make this idea clear. The ultimate expression of honoring parents is humility. Think about it for a moment. That is the root of all character training. All Musa, all character training boils down to a certain type of humility. What is the humility in this case? I owe my existence to them. Right? I cannot claim any of them. I can claim peripheral things. I can claim the self-development. I can claim what I've taken my raw essence that I was born with and developed. But I can't claim, even my ability to develop my ability, right, was given to me as a gift. And therefore I go back to my parents. The concept of going back to parents, let's put it this way, the underlying concept of gratitude, there's a deeper midah that fuels gratitude. And what is that? Humility. The humility is, I can't take credit for this. I thank you for it. You gave me a gift, and I admit. That's why in Hebrew the word for thanking and the word for admitting is the same word. Modeh means I thank, it means I admit. And therefore it's complete humility. What is not coveting? It's a total humility. If something was given to you, it's got nothing to do with me. What gives me the right to think that I have a right to that person's house or his wife or his money or his possessions? Right? If I think that something that he was given, I should get, he should be deprived, right, of that woman, as the Torah says, or his house or his possessions, right? I deserve it, right? Why should he have it? I'm the center of reality. If I want that element, I take it. Total humility means I have exactly what I need, right? I claim nothing more than what I'm given. And someone else has something. The humility I manifest in this context is, I have no claim to that thing at all. It's got nothing to do with me. So you can call it total humility, total emptiness, correct attribution. That means it's his, it has nothing to do with me, no connection to me. That is the concept. Okay, let's develop this a bit further. Please tell me, are we together so far? Is this point clear? This is the fundamental point of the parallel between honoring parents, I attribute my existence totally there. And when it comes to my human interaction with anyone other than parents, I attribute totally what they are to them. No thought of taking that for myself or using it for myself. Okay, good. Let's move on. Now I'd like to go a little bit deeper into the more Kabbalistic realm. I know this is not everyone's cup of tea. I won't labor the point. Right? I don't want to be fired by you because I'm talking about things that are not your interest. So let me try to. But for those who have an interest, try to give this as much depth as possible. Let me try to explain it. The 10 Commandments run the gamut of the 10 Midot or Spherot. Right? You know there are 10 Kabbalistic emanations of God. No proper English word. Sometimes in English they're called the spheres or the emanations, or I don't know if there's a correct English word, but in Hebrew we call them Spherot. God's oneness, Hashem's oneness in the world is manifest always through 10 Giluyim, 10 modes of expression, 10 aspects of reality. These obviously correspond to the 10 elements of mathematics, right, in the decimal system, and all other systems of 10 in the world. If you examine the world carefully, you'll see there must be 10 expressions of all revelation in the world. Yes, you can break them down to more tightly to a 7, you can break those down to a 3, all the 3 is a manifestation of how 2 reveal 1, that's true. But at the level of expansion that we call 10, there are 10 elements, and these are called the Spherot. The first of them, which is represented by I am Hashem, right, the first of them, I am God, is called Keser. Keser is the quality of the crown. That is a point of origin. The crown is above the head. It's where the tefillin are worn. It's what makes the king a king. It's not him, but it's intrinsically his identity. The crown is not part of you. It was once part of you. As I explained in a previous class, tefillin were once part of man's head. When Adam Rishon was created, there was more head, higher parts of the soul investing a higher part of the head. Today all that's left is the opening when a child is born, where there was once more expansion of brain. Right? And that's a subject you can refer to by listening back to the class on tefillin. But that's called Keser. So Keser is essentially the root dimension, transcends the human, and lifts the human to a dimension that is higher than what he is. Your Keser, your crown, is your ability to expand beyond your present borders. Without that, you'd be always locked in to your finite element. I think you know probably that the word for a human is called Adam. Adam in Hebrew is the same letters as Ma'od. Ma'od means very. Very means whatever it is, it's more than that. Very, it's the word, the concept of Ma'od is a word that means that whatever you have, I emphasize, I amplify. That's what very means, right? Whatever is good, it's very good, right? Very good means it's amplified. So Ma'od, the human being, incidentally, just a complete aside, the Hebrew word for money is Ma'od, B'kol Ma'odecha, because money is a fluid medium that is meant to increase. It's meant to be used to increase, right? It's a fluid means of production. Anyway, that's a side point. So, Keser, the crown, as another side point, I hope you realize the word Keter in Hebrew adds up to 620. Look through the 10 Commandments, you'll notice there are 620 letters. Why? Because there are 620 mitzvahs. Obviously, the 10 Commandments contain, as we said before, what could be more obvious? The 10 Commandments contain all the Torah, and therefore in the 10 there are 620 elements. 613 commandments that we're familiar with, and 7 rabbinic commandments. Obviously, we have our contribution, or the 7 Noahide mitzvahs, right, which is the attachment to Torah, obviously. And so you have a total of 620. And that's Keser, and we can talk about that at length, and perhaps some other time we will. Let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum. You began with a Keser, you begin with that, then you move through the form, the right side of the brain, the left side of the brain, the unification of the two which comes in the throat, under the dikna, the beard, the neck is the point of connection with the higher world and the lower world. Then you get expression in the world, the right side, right, which is the outgoing expression in the world, the left side, which is the sense of limitation, control, the center of the body, which is the harmony between the two, just like the dais in the center of the mind is the harmony between male and female halves, and so forth and so on. Then you get the 2 kidneys, which expresses the same idea in the roots of production, procreation. Then you get circumcision, the bris, which is the mechanism of transmission to another, the element of bond between male and female, the inner world and the outer world, where the two become one. And then finally you have Malchus, right? Malchus, which is, with respect to the male, it is the female. It's the other half, the part that should be bonded, but is revealed as another. Or, if you like, in the human form, it is the concept of birth. Malchus is now something extra, something outside. What is the 5th book of the Torah? which is the 10th. When you break the 5 down into 10, the 5th book of the Torah is Dvarim, the words that are spoken. Who spoke the words of Dvarim? Moses. Right? Not Hashem. Hashem speaks the first 4, and the 5th one is the receivers. It's the Dvarim, it's the words. Right? Midbar is the process of speaking. Bamidbar, and Sefer Dvarim is the product, the words. So Malchus is the opposite of Keser. Keser is the root that begins the process, and the final revelation is called Malchus. Right? Here I'm working hard to try to explain why not coveting, the mitzvah of not coveting, the prohibition of coveting, is a full expression of Malchus. Let me say the idea at root and try to explain it. Malchus is total emptiness. The quality, Keser is total content, contains everything. Those 620 elements are all there compressed in root. And by the time you get to Malchus, you've emptied yourself completely. Malchus means nothing of its own. And not coveting means nothing of my own. Nothing of my own. Only what's given to me. Only what's part of me. Something that's yours I don't even relate to as if it might be mine. I don't even want it for me, let alone go out and do something to get it or to steal it or to... Right? Coveting means I don't even see it as related to me. I'm completely empty of any desire beyond merely what I am. And that's what Malchus is. Let me explain a little bit more about Malchus. I want to leave time to go into the practicalities of coveting. Don't want to be accused of being only theoretical. But let me explain a little bit of the concept of Malchus. First of all, let's have the definition. The Zohar says, Malchut, Leit le migar me klum. Leis le migar me klum. He has nothing of his own. That's a technical definition of Malchus. That which has nothing of its own. Nothing of its own. First, let me give you the Kabbalistic expression of this. For those with a sensitivity to the deeper wisdom, I hope you'll enjoy this. And then try to explain it in a little bit more philosophical terms. Here's the Kabbalistic take. Of all the 10 Spherot, right, the Keser here, the Chochmah, the Bina, if you go through all the 10 points, so-called Eitz Chaim, the tree of life, right, I'm sure you've seen that diagram, maybe I should show it to you, make it a little bit more obvious. Show you the picture of the 10 Spherot. Here's an ancient picture from the Tosfos Yom Tov where he actually goes through the 10. Somebody took the trouble to print this out in English. So, not English, sorry, but in clear Hebrew, so that you can actually read it. Right. Here's the 10 spheres. I hope you can see these. This is just a big chart. Keser, Chochmah, Bina, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Chod, Yesod, and Malchus is the last one, right? So these are the 10 Kabbalistic parts that constitute reality. By the way, you notice there are 22 lines joining them. 3 horizontals, okay, 7 diagonals, 7 and 12 diagonals and verticals. Each of those 22 lines joining the spheres is a different letter of the alphabet. Right? The Hebrew aleph base, each of those lines, interaction between spheres, interaction between right and left is aleph, for example. Right? So the main male-female bond or interaction, that's called aleph. And this is called mem, and this is called shin. Each of these interactions, dynamic interactions between the spheres, is a different letter. The alphabet is a chemical formula. The Hebrew alphabet is a chemical formula. You can read it, you understand chemistry, you can build anything in the world from the aleph base. In fact, that's how the world was constructed, from those elements. But anyway, that's not our point at the moment. But these are the 10 spheres. The last one, the Malchus. If you take, here's the concept. If you take all 10 of them and you examine each one, right? Stay with me. Let's say you go into Keser itself. You go deeply into each of these. How many parts will you find to each one? No, why am I doing all the thinking? Give me an answer, please. Let's say you take any sphere and put the microscope on it, and you look deeply into it. How many parts will you find, please? Tell me. No, somebody, anybody? 10, obviously. Obviously you find 10. The basic answer is 10, because if all of reality consists of 10 elements, then each element obviously contains all 10. Okay, that must be clear. However, if you go deeply into each one and look very carefully, you'll find only 9. You'll find only 9. What has happened to the 10th? So watch this carefully. What has happened to the 10th element of Keser? It's disappeared and gone down to the Malchus. What has happened to the 10th element of Chochmah? It's missing, it's gone down to the Malchus. What's happened to the 10th element of Bina? It's missing, it's gone down to the Malchus. And so with all of them. Which means this, listen carefully to this. It means each one's missing its Malchus. Right? There's no Malchus of each one. Read, no revelation of each one. And when you get down to the Malchus, what do you find? It has 10 elements. Which 10? Only the 10 that it got from everyone else. obviously 9 from all the 9 above it, and its own being, which is the holder of all the 9. And therefore, you realize, it's an amazing thought, it means that Malchus has nothing of its own. What did the Zohar say? Leis le migarmei klum, he has nothing of his own. He's only the element that's missing of all the others. Right? And of course, if you look deeply enough, you never find it. Because when you look here, it's only a contribution from the others. When you go back to all the others, you find they're missing. Right? The meaning is something like this. That I didn't say there's no Malchus in any of the other spheres. I said the Malchus has been given down to the Malchus HaKlalis. Right? It's down there in the Malchus. Which means like this. Which means no, the Sheva mitzvahs of the Bnei Noach are not part of the 600. How can they be? They're not the same mitzvahs. How could they possibly be? They're different mitzvahs. They're the non-Jewish version of those mitzvahs. Anyway, that's not our subject right now. One thing at a time. Let's not get sidetracked. Please keep your questions on the track, exactly on what we're talking about now. It means that the Malchus is you can never find it. So here's the secret of Malchus. It is always, only, the revelation. Of course, Josh, it has only 9. It has only 9. The Malchus, they all have only 9. The 10th, right? The 10th element is the part that's missing and goes down to find the Malchus. Let me try to explain it like this. Stay with me. I'll try to give you Stay with me. I'm getting good questions. Stay with me. I'll try to explain. The Malchus is something that is nothing, which means this. The concept of Malchus is only a gilu of everything else. It's only a revelation of everything else. Is something that reveals everything else something, or is it nothing? Let me give you an example. Let's say I tell you a story. The medium, my telling, the words, the book that it's written in, the package, the meaning, right? The presentation, the amount of time it took me to tell you, the words, the paper on which it's printed, the ink. Is that something or nothing? Stay with me carefully. On one hand, it's nothing. Nothing at all. The story is the story. The events, the story is the story. This is only the way of presenting it to you. On the other hand, it is something. It's the package that presents it. But it's not part of the story. Let me give you another example. You have a computer. Ah, David, good. It's worth teaching to get responses like that. Stay with me carefully. Again, new ears, please. New ears. We're trying to hear things in a new way, not package them up into familiar concepts. We want to break down familiar concepts. Let me give you another example. What is a computer screen? Right? You're watching your computer. You have a screen. There's one thing you should never see on the screen. What is that? There's one thing the screen should never show you. Tell me what that is, please. There's one thing that the screen, if it's a good screen, will never show you at all. What is that, please? The screen. If you see the screen, it's not doing its job. The job of a projector, of a screen, is to show you what it's meant to be showing you, not the thing itself. If you look at your computer screen and you see the screen, you see the material, the glass, the pixels, not doing its job. You should look at the screen and see through it. You should see the thing that it's showing you. The screen should be invisible. Now a screen like that, answer me, is it something or nothing? No? Is it something or nothing? It's both. It's nothing because it's transparent. It's only there to show you something else. On the other hand, it's the thing that shows you something else. But if it only shows you something, the more it's not there, the better. The more it's not there, the more perfect it is. Let me give you another example. Maybe we'll get somewhere together. When you watch an actor performing a role, a brilliant actor performing a role, what's the one thing you do not want to see? What's the one thing you should not be seeing? The actor. You should be seeing the role that he's playing. If you see the actor playing the role, he's not good at all. Now, it's very easy to obstruct. It's very easy for the actor's ego to get in the way so that he is playing the part. And he's playing it incredibly and masterfully. But then he's a pathetic actor. Again, the perfect actor is someone who's so good that he disappears completely. And that's his presence. Stay with me carefully. The greatest human being who ever lived, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses. What was his greatest quality? Complete transparency. He was total humility. When you looked at him, you saw Hashem. And that's his greatness. Do you see the paradox? The greatest human being who ever lived, of a stature that is cosmic, for all time, the giver of the Torah, the one who speaks to God face to face, his main characteristic is that he's completely empty. No ego at all. And therefore, God shines through him. And the paradox is, he becomes the greatest human being who ever lived. Him, personally. Of course, it means nothing to him. It doesn't speak to him at all. All that speaks to him is the fact that he's transmitting God. Is this clear? Eli Natan. I don't mean you can't see it. I mean it's not there. Eli Natan. What do I mean when I say you can't see the screen? You answer me, Eli. Is the screen there or not? Come on. Eli, is the screen there or not? You tell me. Yes. Should you see it? No. The more transparent the screen, the better. The less the actor's visible, the better. Here's the paradox. The actor comes out on stage and he plays a part which is amazing. He takes you back in history and you actually feel like you're speaking to the person that he's playing. You get lost in it and you really believe you're speaking to that personality. And then suddenly the play's ended, the lights come on, and there's the actor presenting himself and taking a bow. What happens is, because he disappeared, he becomes great. He's the most famous actor. He's the greatest actor in the world. His personality is the greatest. Right? Why? Because he was able to become nothing. That's the midah. Yes, Nikki, beautiful. Nicola from Croatia. Moshe became the message itself. Other prophets were a medium presenting a message. Moshe became the message. He becomes a musical instrument that is indistinguishable from the music. He becomes a musician who's indistinguishable from the music. A great musician doesn't play a piece of music, he becomes the piece. He becomes the music. You cannot separate him, just like the mind becomes what it knows. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. What I'm trying to get across here is Midas HaMalchus. Midas HaMalchus is total emptiness. It is only the revelation. The reason that all 9 Midas, all 9 spheres don't have a Malchus is because the Malchus is nothing other than their Gilui. They all get together in a Malchus Klali, which is the mechanism of simply showing them. So the 10th of them, right, I hope this is making some sense now. The 10th of them, right, the 10th of them is only the screen. It's not Gilui, revelation. It's only the revelation, like the screen. The screen is only the revelation. It's only there to show you what's inside. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't add anything. If it adds something, it's not doing its job. If the screen adds something, right? If the photograph adds something to the scene, it's not doing its job. It's perverting the screen, right? That is perversion. It's there to receive and give back authentically, right? This is why the Malchus is totally female. The Malchus is completely feminine. The Malchus in Torah is David HaMelech, and he's the one who deals only with women, so to speak. That's his issue in the world. David is called the feminine. In Kabbalistic literature, David is called Batsheva, the 7th of the great 7 lower characteristics of the 10 that come down to the world. The Malchus is only female. What is the work of the female? To absorb from the male and produce authentically. What is the work of the Jewish people? To be married to God. The female that gives birth to what he is in the world. Right? Authentically, correctly, without any distortion. Get the Torah message from Hashem and deliver it in the world authentically. Malchus receives from all 6. Yes, Yechiel, of course, it receives from all 9. In the lower world, it receives from all 6. What is the work of Shabbos? Shabbos is to show the meaning of the week. What is Shabbat? Shabbos is Malchus. Listen to this. If this doesn't move you, there's no hope for you. If what I'm about to tell you now does not move you, go play golf on a Wednesday evening, or Monday evening. This is not for you. Listen to this. What is Shabbat? Shabbat is simply the destination of the week. It's only the pulling together of all the other days. Right? Shabbat is only the meaning of the week. Listen to this. The Torah never mentions Shabbat without mentioning 6 days of work first. Shabbat is nothing on its own. It's the result of the 6 days of work. It's the culmination and the coming home and the bringing together, the consolidation, the building into the soul of the work of the week. If you've done nothing all week, Shabbos is useless. Shabbat is the coming together. Shabbat is when the 6 sides of the cube have been put together. Then you get the cube. Without the 6 facets of the cube, you don't have a cube, you have nothing. The 7th is the 6 sides of the cube locking together to make a cube. Where's the 7th? Well, I can't show it to you. I can't pull it out. But I can show you when it's there. When I put the 6 real facets of a cube together, the 7th appears. It's the unity of... Now listen to this. The very ancient source says the following thing. I think it's the Gvul Binyamin, one of the ancient sources. Listen to what he says. He says, when the world was created, without going into derivations in the background, but here's the thing that will move you, and if it doesn't, then Torah is not for you. He says, when the world was created, each of the 6 days was created, and each of the 6 days had 28 hours. Each day was created with 28 hours, and each of the days gave 4 of its hours to Shabbat, and Shabbos ended up with 24 hours, and so did they. Where does Shabbos come from? A gift of 4 hours from each of the days. Its culmination, its 7th component, right? 28. So there were 7 groups of 4 in each day. Okay? And each day gave its contribution, its 7th element. Its Malchus element. It gave its 7th element. Right? Its revelation element. Its Tachlis element. Where it reveals what it is, gave it away. All of them gave away that component. And what happened? It was 6 times 24 gifts, which made up the 24 hours of Shabbat. So where does Shabbos come from? Do you see the? I hope you see this. I hope you see this. The 9 of them, or in the lower 7, each of the 7 is missing its Malchus. What has it done with it? Given as it a gift to the Malchus. Shabbat, each of the 7 days gave away 1/7 of itself, right? And where did that 1/7 end up? As the 7 elements of Shabbos, which means Shabbat has nothing other than the Gilui of the week. The whole point of Shabbat is to bring home and enjoy and consolidate and live and be what was built during the week. Okay, Jody, worth getting up for. I'm glad to hear that. Okay. Okay. Let's get to not coveting, otherwise we'll never cover the details. Lo Sachmoid. I hope this has been useful. Okay. And let us get to not coveting. So the not coveting is total emptiness of self. What do you mean that's got a relationship with me? Why would I even think it has something to do? I look across the fence and I see his house, his wife, his money, his children, his possessions. Why would I even imagine that has anything to do with me? Right? If I have no ego, nothing is attached to me at all. As the Buddhists say, you lose your sense of attachment to the world. They're quite correct in Zen. I'm talking about Zen, not other forms of Buddhism. In Zen Buddhism. Right, they're quite correct. Read my book called The Letters to the Buddhist Jew. Letters to a Buddhist Jew. If you want to explore the authentic sources of Zen. But anyway, be that as it may. I'm getting irrelevant comments here. I'm getting people who are trying not to understand. I'm sorry to offend you. I won't say your name. But I'm getting a few comments here that are completely, not new ears here, trying not to understand. You know, when you learn Torah ideas, it's much easier not to understand. Much easier not to understand. The only way to understand is to shed preconceptions. Shabbos is 24 hours, right? Like every other day is 24 hours. So let's talk about coveting. Lo Sachmoid. What does the mitzvah involve? So the root of the mitzvah is correct attribution. It's nothing to do with me. So much so that the prohibition is not to want what that person has, let alone take it in any way, not to want it. So let's focus on that. And obviously you're talking about ego emptiness, no attachment at all. That's why the mitzvah has the format. Howard, that's a good point, and you've said something a bit offline, but I'll pick it up because it will open up a new field for us. Coveting someone's Torah is okay. Listen carefully to this, Howard. When you're jealous of somebody and you want what they have, let's say Torah. Let me ask you a question, Howard. You're jealous of someone's Torah. The person is wise, deep, perceptive. They have unbelievable Torah, and you feel an insane jealousy about that. Let me ask you a question, Howard. Do you want his Torah, or do you want Torah like his? Let me ask you a question. Let me put it to you brutally. Do you want to have the same Torah that he does, or do you want to take his away? That he should not have it anymore? He should become a total idiot, and you should have it. Let me ask you that. Do you want Torah like his, or do you want his? No, give me an answer, please. Come on. You can all answer that question. Of course, indeed. Howard, that's the answer. You don't want his Torah. Let me make it even more painfully obvious. Here's a young man. He's not married. He looks across the fence. He sees his neighbor's wife. She's beautiful, extremely attractive, kind, loving, wonderful, unbelievable woman. And it motivates him to want to get married to a woman like her. Is that okay or not okay? Just give me a message. Type me. Okay or not okay? Sure, it's okay. Wanting a wife like his is not the problem. Wanting his is the problem. Lo sachmo doesn't mean you want one like his. Let me ask you this. You look across the fence and you see your neighbor's house. He has a really nice house. You're walking down the street, you see a nice house. It makes you want a house like that. Is that okay? No? Give me an answer. Well, it's not okay because it's immature. It's immature and materialistic and judging yourself in relation to other people. It's keeping up with the Goldbergs, keeping up with the Cohens. That's immature. That's not the way you should think. But it's not coveting. Okay? Let me make this totally painfully clear. Lo sachmo does not mean that you want something like his. Good or bad. If you want something that's not good for you, like you want a nice house because he has a nice house, but it's not coveting. If you want Torah, you want a character like his, you want unbelievable sensitivity, you want his track record of mitzvahs and kindness and self-control, that's wonderful. Of course you should. That's why it says, Kinas Seifrim Tar B'Chochma. Jealousy of the wise increases wisdom. You should be insanely jealous of the spiritual giants. Totally. That's fine. You don't want to take it away from them. You want to be like them. That's wonderful. You're even allowed to want to be better than them. So there's someone you know who knows a lot of Torah, and it makes you insanely jealous because no one respects your Torah. So you are fired up, and you spend years trying to be better than him. That's great. That's fine. Even if you're doing it to be better than him. There's better motivations, of course, but that's a wonderful motivation. Right? Not only is there no harm in aspiring for something, it's necessary, otherwise you'll get nowhere. And let me tell you this, a motivation like that is very healthy. It will get you someplace. If you want to serve God just for the sake of serving God, it's not very motivating. Unfortunately, most of us don't feel that. Want to serve God well because it'll be good for you is fine. You want to learn Torah because it'll get you a good shidduch, right? You'll be respected, etc. That's fine. It's not the highest motivation, believe me, but it's a very good start. It'll get you someplace. So first point we've learned. Thank you, Vismay. Right? Thank you. So, yes, Josh, it is ego, but it's ego used for the right purpose. It's ego used for the right purpose. Absolutely. Why not? Why not? Use the lower things for a higher purpose. Why not? That's correct use of ego. Right? You're not using ego to be the richest man on the block. You're using ego to become the greatest Talmid Chacham on the block. That's great. That's great. Believe me, if everybody worked that way, we'd be okay. So, first lesson we've learned is that Lo Sachmo does not mean wanting something like other people have. Excuse me a second. Get some fresh air here. Hot here in London. And therefore, Lo Sachmo is... Excuse me one second. Yosef? Open the front door, the garden door. The big door. To the garden. Yeah. Sorry, just get some air through here. Lo Sachmo. And therefore, it is not... Now, here comes the central point of Lo Sachmo. The prohibition is wanting. And I've tried to explain as best I can why the prohibition is vested not in an action, but in emotion. It's emptiness of emotion in this area. That's the essence. Now, let's take the next step. How do you actually transgress it? Here we have a famous and classic, one of the great classic arguments or discussions in Torah. The famous opinion of the Ibn Ezra is that the prohibition is simply in wanting. That's all. The Torah prohibits your desire. Look across the fence. You see what he has, what she has. You conceive a desire for that thing. You've transgressed one of the 10 commandments. And Ibn Ezra asks himself the obvious question, how can Hashem prohibit a desire? How on earth can he prohibit an emotion? How can he do that? He can prohibit an action. Don't make an effort to get that person's house, wife, husband, objects, money. You can control an action, but how can you control a thought? It's famously known that the more you try to control a thought, the less you'll manage. Try not to think of a particular thing. That's all you'll think about. How can God prohibit an emotion? That is just beyond human capacity. Right? And he answers as follows. This is a famous issue. How can he prohibit a desire? And he answers, if you were completely empty of ego, completely empty of any thought that anybody's object could possibly belong to you, it wouldn't occur to you to want it. He puts it like this. He says that you do not aspire to a desire for something that could not possibly be yours. When there's something that is, you don't suddenly conceive a desire to jump to the moon. It's just, here's the key. You only desire things that in some way you think might relate to you. In some way, no matter how extreme or distant, if in some way could relate to you, you'd want it. If it's got no possible connection with you, there's no way you could possibly have that thing. Not in the furthest reaches of your imagination. It wouldn't occur to you to want it. I'll give you his ancient analogy. Doesn't work so well in the modern era, but just to be authentic to what he says. He says the peasant who lives on the farm, heavy boots, muddy boots, all he knows is the earth and the coarseness of the earth. That's all he knows. Does he conceive a desire to marry the princess? It doesn't occur to him. It's completely out of the realm of his social reality, and therefore doesn't occur to him. Right? You don't conceive of a thing that's irrelevant to you in every possible way. It wouldn't occur to you. Of course, when I give a lecture like this in the Beis Yaakov, the girls always say to me, "But Rabbi, the peasant always marries the princess." Okay, maybe if so, it's not an analogy that works anymore. But you transgress, and God can prohibit it. He can't prohibit an emotion as such, but He can command a mindset. If your state of mind is that you've been given what you need, and if you need something else, God would have given it to you. And if He's given somebody else something that you don't have, then obviously that person needs it. Why would you covet a tool that you haven't been given? Obviously it's not a tool you need for your path in life. It wouldn't even occur to you. If you've been given a certain amount of money, or a certain spouse, or a certain level of intelligence or looks, then obviously you were given those because that's what you need. He doesn't make mistakes. When He gave you your bag of tools when you were born, He put you in the right place at the right time with the right bag of tools. He knows what He's doing. So why would you covet somebody else's tool? There's no function you could possibly use it for. Right? And then, excuse me. Yes? Sorry, could you talk to the other room? Sorry. You wouldn't conceive. Okay, that's what he says. However, it's a very difficult level, and so the other commentators, the Sefer HaChinuch and the Rambam, and virtually everyone else takes the view that you only transgress coveting when you make a move to get it. You have to do something to get it. Now, let's not go too far. If you make too much of a move, then you're guilty of stealing. Let's say I covet some object in your house, and I sneak in and take it. So then I'm guilty of stealing. As it happens, I'm guilty of coveting too. The wanting is the coveting. So I transgressed 2 of the 10 commandments. Right? You understand? Or at least one that's rooted in the 10 commandments. If I conceive of I like your new car, or your new whatever it is, I sneak into your house and I take it away. I'm guilty of coveting, and the action that I did, which took it, which is called stealing. You could be guilty of both of those. But the general interpretation is this, that when somebody wants something of somebody else's, and they make a move to get it, they put the other person under psychological duress. They pressure them to give or sell them the object. That is when you transgress coveting. Now listen carefully, there's a subtlety here. You're not guilty for the action. You're guilty for the thought. Everybody agrees that coveting is in the mind and the heart. Everybody agrees with Ibn Ezra on that point. The only argument is, do you have to do an action to transgress or not? The action is not the transgression. Please make this absolutely clear. So let's give you an example. I walk into your house and I see an object that I like. I say, I'd like that object. You say, no, look, it's got family, sentimental value, it's not for sale. You say, listen, I'll pay you double its value. They say, no, for no price, this is not for sale. And I start pressurizing you and embarrassing you in front of all your guests, and I make you look small-minded, and eventually, begrudgingly, you sell it to me or give it to me. I've totally transgressed coveting. You cannot accuse me of stealing. You gave it to me. There were many witnesses. You took the price, or you double the price, or you gave it as a gift. That's irrelevant. You gave it. It's a legal gift. You no way can claim it back legally, but you wished you would not have. That means, is this clear? So when I put you under duress through an action, I pressurize you, I embarrass you, I humiliate you, I argue with you, I pressure you, I give you subtle arguments why actually it's not good for you. I tell you, that thing's causing you allergies. You should give it away. Or I say to you, that your wife, she's not good for you. You could, you should divorce her. And eventually you divorce her so I can marry her. That is coveting. Not the action. Not the action itself, but the action is a prerequisite to the transgression, as the Sefer HaChinuch makes clear. You need to do the action, and then you're guilty for the coveting. But you only transgress the prohibition of coveting when you do the action as well. The Torah does not prohibit simply coveting, according to these opinions. I hope this is clear. Okay. And therefore, the problem is that I put you under duress, not to the extent of stealing, so you cannot hold me accountable for stealing, and of course it's illegal. Let me give you one element that I hope makes this clear as well. Yes, indeed, Jonathan, Rabbi Joy, that's a good point. This mitzvah is expressed twice in the Torah in two slightly different ways. I don't want to go into that right now. Indeed, in the two formulations of the Ten Commandments, there are different words that are used. So I don't want to go into that now. Esther, that's a good question. If someone has a fancy object or lives in a flashy residence or whatever it is and makes other people want that thing, that's a bad midah on the part of that person. That's why people should rather have, if there is a luxury or wealth, it should be expressed inwardly, not outwardly. It's more appropriate to live in a house that looks normal on the outside. You want it to look special on the inside, that's more appropriate. The kind of person who makes it look good inside and outside, but the person who makes it look very, very average on the inside, they make it look good only on the outside to make other people think certain things. That's not the level that we're looking for, right? And yes, you are putting a temptation in front of others to make them. It's also not good for you. You might invoke an ayin hara when you present your wealth or good fortune in a very excessive way in front of other people. But that's a different problem. Okay, so when you do an action, right? When you want something and you want it for the right reason. Now, wanting something for the right reason is not coveting. That's a correct desire, right? That's a correct desire, right? Someone's asking when King David coveted Bathsheba, he wanted to marry her. He saw that out of them would come the Mashiach, and he wasn't wrong. That's sort of a desire. Desire is not coveting. Coveting is when I put you under emotional duress to get something from you, right? And then you give it to me. So that is a transgression of the Lo Yisachmod. So the problem here is again emotional duress. Do you have other versions of this in Torah? I'll just give you one semi-parallel one just to illustrate, and that is when you gamble. Right? One of the problems with gambling, there are a number of problems, but one of them is what's called asmachta. What's asmachta? It is, at least one of the forms of asmachta is, let's say we gamble, and at the end of the night, you lose. When you pay me your gambling debts, you pay the debts unwillingly. Legally, it's valid, of course. You knew if you've lost, you'd pay, and you hand it over. No legal recourse. But you do it unwillingly. You didn't sit down to lose. When you sell me, when I buy an object from you, right, or I sell you an object, you part with the money willingly. You're totally willing to part with the money. You want the object, and you're happy you bought the object. If it's a good price, you're thrilled. But when you pay a gambling debt, you pay the money away, gaining nothing, and therefore you're unwilling in giving it away. That's called asmachta. It's a problematic acquisition on my behalf. It's legal, but it's problematic. Of course, you can get around that if you put the money in before you gamble. All the participants sit around the table. They all put in a certain amount of money before they begin. That's totally willingly given, right? Because it's giving you the chance to win. You pay it willingly. At the end of the night, you walk away without the money. That's okay. That's not. I think you can see this. It's a question of emotional unwillingness. Let me give you a practical application. When you negotiate. Let's say you're selling something. So let's say you're buying a house. You go to that person and you negotiate very, very aggressively for the house. And the person ends up selling it to you for less than he hoped he would get for his house. Is that Lo Yisachmod? You answer that question, please. Here's a person, he wants £100,000 for his house. And that's what he wants. And you negotiate and eventually you get it for 85. Right? And a lot of aggressive negotiating. Is that Lo Yisachmod? Are you guilty of that? Please give me a yes or a no. The answer is no. Not at all. Not at all. Why? He sold. He agreed to accept that amount of money. I'll give you the test. Would he undo the deal if he could? No. He couldn't get a better price. Again, let's get this clear. This person tried to get a better price than yours. He could not find a better price. He needed the money. He ended up making a decision that in order to sell, at this point in time, he would sell it for 85. Was that willing? Totally. What's the test? Would he undo it? Imagine you go back the next day and you say, you know what, I'll give you back your 85 and you give me back the money, here's your house. He'll say no. He made a decision that he needed the money he wanted to sell. Is this clear? Lo Yisachmod is only when the person It doesn't matter. Again, it doesn't matter how much duress is applied, as long as when he finally agrees, he agrees willingly. Right? Again. Here's the test. If you put someone under duress and they give the thing to you or sell it to you, secretly are they wishing they would not? Which means if you gave them an opportunity to back out, they would back out. Then you're guilty of lo sachmod. But if they would not back out, right? You say to this person, look, 85 but I'm not forcing you. 85 or you're free to cancel the deal. If the person cancels the deal, that's fine. If he doesn't cancel the deal, it means he wants 85. Is this clear? I hope this is... Howard. We're talking about regretting the sale to the extent that he would undo the sale right now. Okay? And he was only doing it because of emotional duress, you embarrassed him or something else. That's not less. Okay? Please, I hope this is clear. So when somebody agrees to sell at a lower price, and they're upset that they had to let it go for that, there's no sachmod. There's disappointment. But there's no sachmod is when the person secretly wishing that he wouldn't do it, and if there wasn't anyone else watching, he wouldn't do the deal right now. Right? I hope this is clear. Okay, let me finish with the story. We're running out of time, of course, as usual. Let me try to illustrate these points with a story. Why is not stealing contained in Lo Sachmod? Eli Natan? It is. Oh, you mean why is it not under that head? Why is it not under that heading? Because there are two different categories here. One is the category of taking away something from somebody else. Eli Natan, listen to me. Right? Le Signoif, do not steal. You're taking away something from somebody else. That's one category. This is something totally different. This is wrong attribution. This is not seeing that what you've been given is what you need. It's a completely different. This is a mindset. This is Malchus, right? This is Malchus. This is not being emptied out. As I pointed out to you, when you steal, you also cover Lo Sachmod. You're guilty of that as well. Why not? I'll give you an example. That's true, Eitan. You are transgressing. When you transgress one of them, you transgress others as well. Indeed. Not explicitly, but implicitly. Okay, let me give you one final story. So, I actually heard this from the rabbi involved. There was a family in Israel who had a child in kidney failure. So they had a transplant. He was transplanted a kidney from his mother. It was rejected. 4-year-old boy, I think, when the story began. Another sibling transplanted a kidney, rejected again. A third relative contributed a kidney, it was rejected a third time. And very unusually, the surgeons wanted to try a fourth transplant, very unusual. But, as a young child, you can't be on dialysis the rest of your life. It's a life-saving opportunity. And they wanted to attempt a fourth transplant from his 18-year-old sister. 18-year-old sister, healthy girl. They wanted to use one of her kidneys to transplant to save her young brother's life. The parents went to this rabbi. I know this rabbi, a famous rabbi. They went to him and they said to him, are we allowed to pressurize? Are we allowed to put pressure, emotional pressure on our daughter to give her kidney to her brother? Can we say to her, listen, how can you let him die? Can we put emotional duress on our daughter to give her kidney? Or would we be transgressing one of the 10 Commandments? Lo Sachmod. There'd be no stealing. She'd have to agree. She'd agree. Be no stealing. She'd sign the papers and she'd agree. She's a major, halachically, she's of age, over bat mitzvah. But maybe secretly, she's just unable to refuse emotionally, because how can everyone look at her and say, how are you letting your brother die? By the way, as an aside, this is a big problem in organ transplantation. Whenever a family member is asked to give an organ, there's always this problem. How do you face the dying eyes of your relative and your parents all looking at you and saying, how can you not? How do you give voluntary consent? So I'll tell you how that's been dealt with in the transplant world, and again, it's not our subject for now. What they do is they test all the members of the family and don't disclose the results. Then the surgical team interviews each member of the family privately. And when they come to the member who matches, they say, look, you're alone with us in this room. We are the surgeons, psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers of the transplant team. Our duty is to tell you that your kidney matches. If you agree, we'll use your kidney. If you do not, we'll never disclose that you matched. Your family will never know. You will have to live with the agony of this decision for the rest of your life. But we'll remove from you the coercive psychological pressure of your family. That's what's done throughout the world today, in many cases. Let's go back to this family. Can we pressurize our daughter, or would we be transgressing one of the 10 Commandments? Putting her under duress, she may agree unwillingly. Classic emotional duress situation. Now, before I tell you what the rabbi said, let me tell you this. This rabbi was once involved himself in the following scenario. He was standing in a shop in Bnei Brak that sells expensive silver. You know, pure silver, very expensive. As he was standing there, a very senior Israeli army officer walked in, completely secular, representing the totally secular end of Israeli society, a very high-ranking officer in uniform with his wife. This secular Jew and his wife, they chose a piece of silver, cost 2,000 shekels or $2,000, I don't remember exactly the price, and in true Middle Eastern fashion, the soldier said to the shopkeeper, "I'll give you 1,500. And the shopkeeper agreed. Absolutely, he said fine. Wrapped up the object, paid for it, walked out the shop. In the doorway, the rabbi confronted the soldier. This is a classic Israeli confrontation. You're talking about a very senior-ranking, totally secular Israeli, confronted by a very rabbinic-looking gentleman, long black frock, long silver payers, long grey beard, black coat, black hat. No question what aspect, what segment of the Israeli population he represents. And switching from Yiddish to Hebrew, he said to the soldier, "You just transgressed one of the 10 Commandments." The officer said, "Rabbi, what do you mean?" He said, "You know why he gave you such a big discount? Because of your rank, your official position. That's called pulling rank. He never would have, I know that he doesn't give anyone else that kind of a discount. He gave you a discount because one day he's afraid you'll end up in politics, you'll be the Minister of Tax or Finance. He didn't want to start anything with anybody that might have consequences. He gave you a discount due to your rank and position. That's called lo tachmod." Isn't that an amazing claim? There's emotional duress. He allowed himself to give a discount that there was some element of duress. Do you know what happened? The soldier stood there and thought about it. He said to his wife, "Please wait here." He went back to the shopkeeper and he said, "I'd like to give you another 500. The shopkeeper said, "No, forget about it. I already gave you a receipt." Pulled out his checkbook and insisted on paying another 500. And I'm not sure which of those two men deserves more respect. The rabbi, for sizing up his character so accurately, or the secular Jew who wanted to be completely clean. Anyway, be that as it may, you can argue with this. This happened to be Rav Zilberstein, Rav Eliash's son-in-law. You can disagree with him, but that was the incident. He said to the parents of the girl, "If you pressurize your daughter, you put emotional duress on your daughter to give her kidney, there's no problem of lo tachmod. There may be other problems. I'm not saying it's a good thing to do, and not at all. But I'm saying there's lo tachmod. Lo tachmod is when you want someone else's thing, and you pressurize them because of your avaricious desire to have that thing. When you put emotional duress on one person to save someone else's life, that's not lo tachmod. Again, there's emotional duress. It may be unwise. There may be a whole list of other problems, but it's not lo tachmod. Let me tell you what the parents did. They said to their daughter, "If you give your kidney to your brother, we'll give you our apartment. We'll find some other place to stay." Why? Because an 18-year-old girl with only one kidney might be a little less marriageable than otherwise. But if she comes with a nice big Bnei Brak apartment attached, that will offset the problem. Is this valid? Is it good? I leave you to think about that. Thank you very much for your attendance. I hope you think about some of the deep things we discussed of Lo Yisachmoid. Gemma, thanks for being with us. I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday when we take the next step in our big ideas. Have a great week, stay safe, and enjoy your learning.